After dropping Lynn back at school, Frasier returned home early to cook for Natalia. She arrived home just as he was putting the meal on the table. "Sit down and eat before it goes cold," he said as she walked in. Natalia didn't need telling twice. Her stomach was growling. She had been tired and hungry all afternoon. The food smelled divine as she sat at the table and wasted no time diving in. Frasier sat and watched her eat. After several mouthfuls, she realized that he hadn't touched his food. She put down her fork and looked at him, her expression unreadable. "Other than cooking, what else can you do well?" she asked him. "You can't go through life with only one skill, you know." Frasier didn't answer her. He picked up a dish of vegetables and piled some more onto her plate. "Why won't you answer me?" she asked him, her tiredness making her grumpier than she otherwise would have been. "I can't believe that you have no aspirations in life other than to serve home-cooked food." Frasier knew that whatever he said at that moment would make her feel worse, so he kept quiet. "Fine," she said sulkily. "If you want to prolong this argument, suit yourself. But at least I tried to make it up to you." He took the necklace out of his pocket and gently handed it to her. "Oh, that is so beautiful," she said, instantly forgetting her tiredness. Natalia went to touch it but withdrew her hand quickly. "What did you buy this for?" He gently put the necklace in her hand before he sat down beside her. "I bought it as a thank you for being with me for 3 years, he said. "I know you're not always happy with me, but I want to make you the happiest girl in the world." She looked at him and wiped a tear from the corner of her eye. Deep down, she knew he was right. They didn't have a house or a car, and it saddened her. Even though she had just landed herself a good job, she only had it for the past few days. She looked at the necklace again and took a deep breath, preparing herself to say what she felt to be necessary. "There's more to life than a necklace, you know," she said. "If you want to make me happy, get yourself a good job. Why don't you ask your friend for a better one? You don't have to spend your life being a security guard." She put the necklace down on the table. For the past 3 years, she had envied women wearing extravagant necklaces. But after marrying a good-for-nothing like Frasier, she had stopped dreaming about such things. The arrival of Sheila saved Frasier from defending himself. "Something smells good," she said as she walked in. "Your husband may not have many good points, but at least he can cook," she added, talking about him as if he wasn't in the room. She sat down and picked up a fork, but she noticed the necklace on the table before she could eat. "Where'd this come from?" Sheila asked, picking it up and examining it. Natalia rolled her eyes. "It's just a necklace. How can you get so excited about it?" She always felt that Sheila overreacted when it came to jewelry. "But you always liked necklaces," she replied. "This is the heart of the seas. Do you know how much this is worth?" She turned it over in her hands. "Who gave it to you? It must have been some wealthy tycoon who's taken a fancy to you. Can you introduce me to him?" she added as she held it to her chest and started daydreaming. "What do you know about it?" asked Natalia. She knew that it was no ordinary necklace, but it was obvious that Sheila was more knowledgeable in such matters. However, being a gift from Frasier, she was convinced that it wasn't too valuable. "My dear, have you seen the film about the shipwreck?" asked Sheila, looking at her as if she was a fool. She returned the necklace and dug out her phone, putting the necklace's name into her search engine to give Natalia more information about it. Natalia looked at it more closely while Sheila was busy. It was indeed a beautiful piece of jewelry. Looking at the blue gem, she even felt like she was at sea. "Frasier, where did you get this necklace?" Natalia asked, looking at him suspiciously, a vision of him breaking the law coming into her mind. Precious jewelry was definitely not something Frasier could afford. "Lynn told me that you like necklaces," he said honestly. "We went to Jewelry City to take a look, but we met a bunch of people who were out looking for trouble. One of the salespeople gave it to me as an apology." Natalia looked at him and raised an eyebrow, unsure whether to believe him. "Don't worry, this necklace is fake. But the salesperson told me that dozens of professionals have been fooled by it. He played it safe." Sheila sighed with relief. Oh, I'm so glad to hear you say that, Frasier," she said happily. "The real Heart of the Seas costs tens of millions of dollars. There's no way in the world you could afford that, no matter how much you love your wife." She took the necklace from Natalia very gently and looked at it again. "Natalia, you will look so beautiful wearing this. Try it on." Natalia lifted her hair from her neck while Sheila stood behind her and put the necklace on. Natalia looked shyly at Frasier, waiting for his reaction. He looked at her in awe. He couldn't believe that the necklace had made her look even more beautiful. Not that he thought it was impossible. It sat on her long neck perfectly. "Beautiful," he blurted out, unable to say anything else. She took it off and looked at it again. "It'll look good with everything in my closet," she said, a look of satisfaction on her face. "But let's eat," she added, "before this food goes cold." They ate silently for a few minutes, the happy look on Natalia's face fading away. "What's the matter?" asked Frasier, a look of concern on his face. "Are they working you too hard?" He had already warned Brett that he didn't need to give Natalia too much to do. Natalia didn't answer. She carried on eating ravenously, determined that no one was going to help her with her work. "What's with all the questions?" asked Sheila, quick to defend her friend. "Are you her boss all of a sudden?" She looked at Natalia. "He's right, though," she added. "If something's worrying you, tell me. Perhaps I can help." "It's work," said Natalia. "My client wants to start a joint venture, but as soon as they heard that I was new, he postponed it," she added, avoiding Sheila's gaze. She hadn't mentioned the excessive demands of her new boss, simply summarizing her worries instead. Sheila's eyes lit up. "I know," she said excitedly. "Ask Brett for help. He was the one who asked you to run the company." "No," said Natalia. "If I ask him for help every 5 minutes, then what's the use of him hiring me? Think of this as a form of training for me. I've got to learn to take charge of myself." "Whatever," said Sheila, not convinced by her answer. "Natalia, you already know how to be strong. Only people who can cook well aren't strong." With that, she shot Frasier a look of disdain. His wife was struggling at work, and all he could do to help was cook her a nice meal. He hadn't even offered her any sympathy or advice at all. He just sat and ate. "Loser," she thought maliciously. "I've had enough," said Natalia, pushing her plate away. The following day, Frasier left straight after breakfast. The conversation at dinner the night before had left him with many questions, and he knew that Brett might give him some answers. He found him in their office at Frandotech. After Brett had offered him some coffee, they sat down together. "Is the company doing well?" Frasier asked, getting straight to the point. "Yes," he replied. "I don't understand how you did it, but without you, we wouldn't be where we are today." Frasier had helped him a lot in the past, and he was always keen to let him know that he appreciated it. Frasier chuckled. "I did have some help," he said, as he winked at the other man. "Don't worry, it'll all become clear in the future." Brett didn't answer. Frasier was always true to his word, so he decided to change the subject. "Natalia's getting a lot of trouble from a client," Brett said, I guess so, said Frasier. What's going on? Brett gave him a brief summary. It turned out that the client was Future-Proof Technology, run by none other than Simon Draper, an old classmate of Natalia's. Do I need to cancel the contract with Future-Proof Technology? Asked Frasier. I can't believe her former classmate would want to make trouble for her. I don't think we need to be hasty, said Brett. After all, this company doesn't compare to ours. Brett was worried. He had set up the contract so Natalia could get experience in her new role. It turned out the contract was causing her more trouble than it was worth. If he canceled the contract, Natalia would think it was all her fault. Frasier looked at him. Leave it to me, he said, as he finished his coffee and left. Frasier left Brett's office and went straight to Natalia's department. He didn't have to wait long before she came out of her office. What are you doing here? She asked him, worried he was skipping work. You don't seem to take your job very seriously, she added sharply. Brett sent me to help you with some of your clients, he mumbled. Oh, okay, she said, relaxing. If Brett had sent him, perhaps he was trying harder than she realized. But I don't know why, she continued. If you can't do anything as simple as selling a house, how does he think you can help me? Frasier shrugged. Well, I have a meeting with my new client. Come with me. When the time comes, just keep quiet, she ordered as they departed. A few minutes later, they arrived at a nearby fine dining restaurant, where Natalia had booked a private room. Frasier, wait for me outside, she said. I'll call for you if anything happens. She paused. Actually, no, she said thoughtfully. It might be more useful if you stayed with me. Okay, he said, following her into the restaurant but waiting outside the door of the private room. They were the last to arrive. Simon Draper was already there, along with two other pot-bellied men. They were all drinking. Natalia, you're finally here, said Simon happily. Come, let me introduce you to my associates. This is Mr. Phelps, and this is Mr. Bell. You may have heard of them. They all shook hands, and Simon pulled out a chair for Natalia. Let's raise a toast, said Mr. Phelps, looking appreciatively at Natalia. Simon didn't lie, he thought. She is indeed a beautiful young woman. Natalia sat down uncomfortably. Simon, she said quietly, I thought we were discussing private business. Why have you invited friends? Natalia, he said patronizingly. They are here for you. I've told them about your potential, and they are eager to help you with your career. I see, she said cautiously. Thank you. She wasn't sure if she believed him, but she decided to go along with his plan for the time being to see where it led them. Don't thank me, he replied smoothly. Thank Mr. Phelps and Mr. Bell. In that case, she said, smiling brightly at the two men, let's drink that toast you suggested. She held up a glass of wine that Simon had handed to her. To Mr. Phelps and Mr. Bell, thank you for taking the time to meet me. To Natalia, they replied in unison, drinking their wine too. Natalia drank her glass of wine in one gulp, much to the men's surprise. Mr. Bell actually spilled some of his wine. Such was his eagerness to get to know Natalia better. Simon hastily refilled her glass. Cheers, he thundered. Here's to future cooperation. Natalia drank the second glass in one gulp again. Her face was beginning to turn rosy from the alcohol, much to the delight of the men in the room. When are we going to start talking about cooperation? Asked Natalia, realizing she was beginning to slur her words. As soon as I have finished drinking this glass of wine, said Simon, a small smile on his face. Natalia was in a daze, not realizing that someone had refilled her glass. She picked it up and started to drink it, but a jolt from behind her frightened her. Someone had grabbed her arm. As she shrugged it off, she looked back to see that Simon had taken off his tie and was walking toward her. Simon, what are you? She started to ask, but he interrupted her. Natalia, we go back many years, he said. You know you can trust me. Between us, we'll go far in the world of business. Mr. Phelps and Mr. Bell exchanged sinister smiles. You've excelled yourself this time, said Mr. Phelps, rubbing his hands together. You've definitely got my contract. Hold on, I'm first, said Mr. Bell. He strode toward Natalia, hunger in his eyes. She jumped aside, knocking her chair over in her haste to escape. Frasier, help! She shouted, running for the door. Simon laughed loudly. Natalia, do you honestly think that good-for-nothing husband of yours will be able to help you? He asked. No matter what we do, he'll just stand by and watch. No sooner were his words out when the door opened with a heavy kick. Simon watched Frasier burst in. He laughed. What are you gonna do about it? He asked Frasier mockingly. Mr. Phelps, Mr. Bell, do you mind if Natalia's husband watches us? You get dirtier every time, said Mr. Phelps as he walked toward Natalia, undoing his tie. Frasier didn't hesitate. He marched straight over to Mr. Phelps and punched him. Mr. Phelps fell backward onto the table, glasses flying everywhere as he landed. Before he could react, Frasier kicked him. He fell off the table and landed with a thud on the floor. Simon watched in terror, a small patch of liquid forming at the front of his pants. I thought he couldn't fight, Simon said to himself. Frasier ignored Simon. He rushed to the corner of the room where Natalia had curled herself to feel protected. Her eyes were blurred, her face was red, and she was still murmuring to herself. Frasier, save me. Simon began to recover his composure. Frasier, do you know who you just hit? He asked, his voice trembling. These two men are very important, you know. They'll not let you get away with this, he added, his confidence returning. Your martial arts skills won't save you. Natalia had contacted him in the past to see if he had any jobs for Frasier. He had responded to her purely because he wanted to take advantage of her. Now, his plan had backfired spectacularly. Not only had he upset the two men he had been trying to impress, but it appeared that he had underestimated Frasier, too.
Hey guys, Frasier here. Listen to the full episode of Unraveling the Son-In-Law exclusively on Pocket FM app. Click the link in description to install the app now.